Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome back into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to leave a like. For all of you subscribers, be sure to hit that notification bell so you can turn on all of your notifications so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I'm going to be here each week to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting. And on today's show, we have a lot to get to today with National Signing Day being on tomorrow. Although the Crimson Tide will not make as much noise as they made during the early signing period on the first National Signing Day, there are a couple of prospects to pay attention to who will announce their commitment on tomorrow. The Crimson Tide also had another big recruiting weekend with them hosting a junior day on Saturday. I will also talk a little bit about that. Also talk about a 5-star defensive back who's set to announce his commitment a little bit later this month. Of course, with the Crimson Tide having that junior day event, they did pick up a commitment from 4-star defensive back Elliott Washington out of Ennis High School in Venice, Florida. You guys can head over to touchdownalabama.com to learn a little bit more about Washington and check out his full scouting report and full recruiting profile over at touchdownalabama.com. But like I said at the top of the show, we have a lot to get to today. And before we even get into all of that, I do want to introduce a new feature to you guys. I know a lot of you have been wanting to ask me questions about Alabama football recruiting. We are giving you that opportunity now. You're going to be able to call in at 205-984-3222. Again, that's 205-984-3222. The number is listed right below. It's going to be there throughout the duration of today's show. You have an opportunity to hit that line, dial that number, call in, leave a voicemail with your recruiting question, and it will be answered on The Process in the near future. So be sure to hit that line. Now we are going to dive right into everything with the Crimson Tide offering a new 2024 defensive back out of John Ehret High School in Louisiana. This offer came from the Crimson Tide defensive coordinator Pete Golding, as the Crimson Tide offered 2024 defensive back Dale Mack. The Crimson Tide actually got an opportunity to see him worked out with the former Alabama defensive back Robbie Green in Louisiana. The Crimson Tide's defensive coordinator Pete Golding and Alabama's offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien were actually in Louisiana, went to the gym, saw Mack working out. Mack said he saw them coming in. He said he knew he had to turn up to show them that he was one of the top defensive backs in the 2024 recruiting class. Got an opportunity to do that, and at the end of his workout, Pete Golding informed them that he had an offer from the Crimson Tide. You guys can read about Mack's reaction to his offer from Alabama over at touchdownalabama.com, of course. But just taking a look at his game really quickly, currently stands at 6'1", weighs approximately 170 pounds. Of course, he will continue to grow, continue to mature, as he's only a sophomore in high school right now. But during his sophomore season at John Ehret High School, he showed that he was a willing tackler in space, showed that he was an effective tackler as well in space, and was also able to make some plays on the ball. But he will continue to grow, continue to get better. He's actually the little cousin of the Crimson Tide's freshman defensive back Kane Williams, who also attended John Ehret High School in Louisiana. The Crimson Tide's coaching staff returned back to the University of Alabama on Saturday to offer a couple of new guys, including 2024 quarterback DJ Lackway out of Willis High School in Texas. He's a prospect who currently stands at 6'3" and weighs 215 pounds, so he's a big physical quarterback. Like I said, he is a dual threat quarterback, so he can get it done with his arm as well as with his leg. So when you get an opportunity to watch what he was able to do as a sophomore, showed nice touch on his deep ball, was really effective in the run pass option situation, which Willis High School allowed him to do a lot. The Crimson Tide's coaching staff said they were really impressed with his ability to run the RPO, so the Crimson Tide are really impressed with this 2024 quarterback out of Willis High School in Willis, Texas. He reacted to his offer from Nick Saban. You guys can check out that article at touchdownalabama.com as well. You guys can also read about how he felt about the Crimson Tide defeating Baylor on the basketball court, because a lot of the prospects who visited Alabama this weekend for his junior day got an opportunity to watch Alabama basketball defeat Baylor in Coleman Coliseum in front of a very disruptive crowd, a very loud crowd. Lackway described the experience as one of the loudest things he has ever been to. So the Crimson Tide had an opportunity to basically piggyback off of the the Rockets crowd that was in Coleman Coliseum on Saturday for that particular game, getting those recruits in Coleman Coliseum to basically let them experience what an SEC experience is like, possibly similar to Bryant-Denny Stadium in the fall. So the Crimson Tide are continuing to extend new offers. They are trying to get their recruiting boards filled up in multiple recruiting cycles, including in the 2023 recruiting class, which is going to be a priority for the Tide once they close out things in the 2022 recruiting cycle. Hopefully tomorrow on National Signing Day, they were able to host some of their top 2023 targets on Saturday, including Miles McVey, a 4-star offensive lineman out of East St. Louis High School in Illinois. He told me that he felt the realness of the Alabama football program during his latest visit to Tuscaloosa. Had an opportunity to spend some time with Coach Saban. He said he learned a little bit more about their program. Also talked about some of the advanced technology that the Crimson Tide's players have at their fingertips. He talked about one particular machine where the Crimson Tide players are actually able to detect which leg is having problems in terms of being weak and what part of their leg is weak. Just talking about how advanced their technology is at the University of Alabama under their medical and under their strength and conditioning staffs as well. So Miles McVey was blown away from his latest visit to the University of Alabama. He said he rates his relationship with the Crimson Tide's coaching staff as a 9 out of 10. So the Crimson Tide looks to be in a really good position with 4-star offensive lineman Miles McVey at the moment. They're also in a really good position with Makari Vickers, a 4-star defensive back out of John Paul II Catholic High School in Tallahassee, Florida. He had an opportunity to visit Alabama again on Saturday. He told me they had a great time. Actually got an opportunity to spend some time with Coach Saban, Coach Sal Siri, Coach Charles Kelly, who is safeties coach for the Crimson Tide. Also got an opportunity to meet with the Crimson Tide's new cornerbacks coach, Travaris Robinson. Said he was a little bit familiar with Robinson because he did coach at Miami before coming to the Crimson Tide. And when you take a look at Makari Vickers, he has offers from programs all over the country, including Miami. So he is sort of familiar with Robinson. He told me that he was really blown away by some of the things that Robinson has been able to do throughout his short time as a college coach. He said that he has only been a college coach for 16 years, but he has had 21 draft picks. So Makari Vickers was just blown away by Travaris Robinson, and he wasn't the only one. The Crimson Tide's newest defensive back commit, Elliott Washington, also spoke highly of Travaris Robinson. So Robinson is making an early impact on the recruiting trail for the Crimson Tide. When I spoke to Washington, who committed to the Crimson Tide on Monday, he told me that he was familiar with Robinson based on his time at Miami as well, because he coached his cousin Brian Poole at Florida. Just talked about how he knew that he has the capability of developing guys to be great players at the next level, taking 5-stars, recruiting them at a high level, and transforming and developing them into first-round draft picks. So the Crimson Tide are in a great position with Makari Vickers, great position with Miles McVey after that junior day visit. They also are looking to be in a wonderful position with 5-star defensive back Jaleel Hurley out of Florence High School in Florence, Alabama. He is set to announce his commitment on February 22nd. As many of you guys know, he was going to originally announce his commitment on last month, but he held off on making that decision. The Crimson Tide were expected to be the favorite back then. With them resetting his commitment date, the Crimson Tide are still the favorite heading into that February 22nd commitment date as well, especially with them setting that commitment date after unofficially visiting the Crimson Tide on last weekend. But his commitment will come in a couple of weeks. A lot of different schools will try to push for him. Hopefully they will try to get him from Alabama for their sake, but the Crimson Tide looks to be in a good position with a 6'3" defensive back. When you take a look at his game, he's a long defensive back, possesses a high IQ. I had an opportunity to watch him play against Gardendale High School earlier in the season. He's a physical defensive back, despite the fact that he's a bit on the smaller side. I watched a lot of his film on last season. He was actually coming down, making some big hits, and that really surprised me, and I think he has grown into more of a physical defensive back. He's going to continue to grow to continue to get stronger as he continues to make the transition to possibly play at the next level. So the Crimson Tide look to be in a good position with them. I think they lead, and I think they are the favorite heading into his February 22nd decision. The Crimson Tide picked up a verbal commitment for Elliott Washington on Monday. They they hopefully will pick up another commitment from a defensive back in the 2023 recruiting class, and it will most likely be Jaleel Hurley. But we will continue to watch his recruitment as things continue to flourish. Recruiting is fluent. Things can change pretty quickly. But at the moment, the Crimson Tide look to be in a wonderful position for the 5-star defensive back out of Florence High School in Florence, Alabama. But the Crimson Tide are going to try to close out the 2022 recruiting class by adding a couple of new members. I remember when the class basically wrapped up on the first National Signing Day during the early signing period, I felt that they were pretty much done. I felt that they succeeded in basically picking up players at all of their positions of need, but they look as if they are going to pick up a couple of other guys, try to pick up a couple of other guys on National Signing Day tomorrow, which is the traditional signing day, which is in February. Of course, this is the National Signing Day that a lot of people who have been following recruiting for a long time are more familiar with. I know with the 2 signing periods, basically a lot of guys signed. Most of the class, I'd say like in between 80 to 90% of the class signed during the early signing period. But there are a couple of guys who hold off until the traditional signing period, and the Crimson Tide are going after 2 of those guys, and Jalen Former, and also a 3-star tight end out of Westgate High School, and Danny Lewis Jr. But taking a look at Jalen Former, he's actually verbally committed to the Florida Gators at the moment. He will announce his commitment tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. CST from Eastside High School in Covington, Georgia. He will choose between the Crimson Tide, Florida Gators, Auburn Tigers, and the Kentucky Wildcats. Although he is currently verbally committed to the Florida Gators, the Crimson Tide got him on campus last weekend for an official visit after basically offering him a couple of days before last week. So the Crimson Tide are trying to make a late push for Former. We'll see what his decision will be on tomorrow at 8 a.m. CST Central Standard Time. We'll have a lot of content on Jalen Former and his decision over at touchdownalabama.com as he makes it tomorrow morning. But taking a look at what he brings to the table, he primarily played guard during his senior season at Eastside High School at 6'5" and approximately 325 pounds. He's a guy that packs a powerful punch. He was able to make some punishing blocks, show some decent mobility as well. I think he will be a guard at the next level if the Crimson Tide were able to pick up a commitment and signature from him on tomorrow. They will also have their eyes on 3-star tight end Danny Lewis Jr. out of Westgate High School in Louisiana. He actually officially visited the Crimson Tide a couple of weeks ago. Similar to Former, the Crimson Tide offered him, I think that week before, got him on campus for an official visit a couple of days later, trying to make a late push for Danny Lewis Jr. as well. The Crimson Tide were originally going to take 3 tight ends in this 2022 recruiting class because they wanted to add some depth to the tight end position. Unfortunately, Jaleel Skinner announced his decommitment from the Crimson Tide during the early signing period, flipped his commitment to the Miami Hurricanes and signed with Miami. With him making that decision, the Crimson Tide are still going to want to add another tight end to the 2022 recruiting class, it seems. With them going after Danny Lewis Jr., he will announce his commitment and choose between Alabama, LSU, and Florida on tomorrow. The Gators had an opportunity to host him for an official visit on last weekend. LSU hosted him for an official visit recently as well. So it's going to be an LSU, Florida, Alabama, all SEC battle for Danny Lewis Jr. on tomorrow. Taking a look at what he brings to the table, he's a big body, 6'4" tight end. A guy who can catch the football in traffic, a very physical runner. I think he runs like a running back in terms of the way he finishes runs. So whatever school gets Danny Lewis on tomorrow, they are going to get a steal. I think he's listed as a 3-star tight end on most recruiting sites now, but I think by the time things wrap up, I think he will be boosted to a 4-star tight end in this 2022 recruiting class because of what he brings to the table. We'll have you guys coverage on Danny Lewis's decision on tomorrow as well. So those are the 2 guys who the Crimson Tide are going to try to add to the 2022 recruiting class, hopefully on tomorrow on National Signing Day. With the Crimson Tide signing 23 guys during the early signing period, they're not expected to have a big day on tomorrow, but I think it will be a pretty good day for the Crimson Tide if they were able to get at least one of those guys and add them to the 2022 recruiting class on tomorrow. But I want to close out today's show by talking about a couple of guys in the 2023 recruiting class that the Crimson Tide are really going after, a pair of 5-star prospects. And the first guy I want to talk about is Jaden Wayne. If you have been watching the process, I think for the last couple of months, I'm pretty sure you have heard of Wayne's name a lot. He's a 5-star defensive end out of Tacoma, Washington. He attends Lincoln High School in Washington, one of the Crimson Crimson Tide's top defensive end targets in the 2023 recruiting class. I recently got an opportunity to catch up with him, and he told me that his relationship with the Crimson Tide's coaching staff is continuing to grow. Nick Saban, the Crimson Tide's coaching staff, was able to travel across the country a couple of weeks ago, basically over the last couple of weeks, traveling and catching up with a lot of different guys. The Crimson Tide's wide receiver coach Harmon Wiggins had an opportunity to head out to Lincoln High School, and Wayne told me that he felt that the love that he receiving from Alabama felt real once he got an opportunity to see their coaching staff at his high school. He said that they did not have to travel all the way out to Washington to see him and his teammates, but they did do it, so he feels a lot of love from them. Hopefully, they will get him on campus on March 5th as they will host another junior day in March, but the Crimson Tide look to be in a great position with Jaden Wayne at the moment, the 5-star defensive end out of Tacoma, Washington, who attends Lincoln High School. The Crimson Tide are also looking to improve their position with a 5-star wide receiver in the 2023 recruiting class, and Brandon Ennis out of American Heritage School in Florida. When you hear American Heritage, you see the Crimson Tide have had a lot of success with players from that program over the last couple of recruiting cycles. Of course, Patrick Surtain attended American Heritage. Looking at this 2022 recruiting class, Earl Little Jr. attended American Heritage as well. Dallas Turner, he did attend during his junior season, I think a couple of seasons before as well. Eventually, he transferred to St. Thomas Aquinas for his senior season. But the Crimson Tide have been really successful at recruiting players from American Heritage, and they're going to try to pull in Brandon Ennis, one of the top wide receivers in this 2023 recruiting class. A great route runner, guy who possesses great ball skills, can really catch the ball well. So the Crimson Tide are going to try to add him to their 2023 recruiting class in the future, but they have a long way to go. His recruitment is still flourishing. He's continuing to evaluate a lot of different things with this recruitment back open at the moment. The Crimson Tide will get him back on campus on March 5th for that junior day in March. Hopefully try to build their relationship with them, with Travaris Robinson being on campus for that visit in March, and with them being on the Crimson Tide's coaching staff, I think that will go over really well for the Crimson Tide. I think he's going to be able to recruit the state of Florida really good for Alabama in the future. But those are the recruiting updates I wanted to provide you guys with on today's episode of The Process. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you are a subscriber, be sure to hit the notification bell. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscriber button so you can be a subscriber. If you are subscribed or not, be sure to hit that like button so we can show that we are locked in with The Process on touchdownalabama.com. Once you are done with that, head over to touchdownalabama.com to pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles, get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue, read our in-depth scouting reports on each Tide commit and each recruiting class. Then head to the Google Play Store if you have that Android device to download the Touchdown Alabama app. If you have the Apple device, be sure to download the Touchdown Alabama app from the Apple App Store. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama.
Process.